Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am here to talk about movies that I watched at the end of 2018. Oh my god, my candle burned out right as I said that. It's done. It's given up the ghost. So as usual, I am here 3 months late with a quarterly movie update. I wanted to talk about the movies that I watched in October, November, and December of 2018. Really, I wanted to talk about it back in January, but it's March, and that's apparently just always how I'm gonna do these. So as usual with these videos, I watched a lot more movies than I am going to talk about because I just don't have time to cover every movie that I watch over 3 months. I watch a lot of movies, but if you want to stay more up to date on what I am watching constantly, you can follow my Letterboxd account. The link will be in the description below, and I pretty much update with a quick one-sentence review for every movie that I watch, and you can stay more up to date there. But with that being said, we are going to jump into some of these. I do not have a beverage, which I know it's unusual for an off-topic. I hope that you can survive with me. But I'm doing this thing right now where I drink a little less caffeine, so I'm just not going to have a caffeinated beverage right now. I could have water. Alright, how's that? That better? Put it right by those mugs I'm not using. So yeah, with that, let's jump into some movies. First, I'm going to talk about movies from 2017 or earlier that I watched at the end of 2018, so stuff that I didn't see in theater or that I didn't see when it was brand new. And then the second half of the video is going to be dedicated to movies that were new, at least when I saw them. For stuff that's a bit older, let's start with the most 90s stuff imaginable, of which I watched many things. I watched the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie for the first time in 2018. I'd never seen it. I've seen the whole Buffy TV series, but I'd never seen the movie. It was the cheesiest 90s thing imaginable, and thank God they changed some elements for the show, because Buffy getting cramps when a vampire is nearby is the worst. It's the worst. Whose idea was that? It was a man's, but truly. Honestly though, it was a lot of fun. I really like Donald Sutherland, so he was a fun watcher, although obviously no one will ever come close to Giles in my eyes. Giles is one of my favorite characters ever, not just in Buffy universe. So it was a ride, it was an adventure, but it was cool to see where that character emerged from, and considering how 90s the television series is, how even more 90s somehow the movie is. I also watched the entire Scream franchise for the first time. Honestly, I have a few like thriller and horror movies on this list, which is not traditional for me, but I think, as I said in my last quarterly movie update video, I've been trying to push myself to watch more horror thriller films, even though I'm a scaredy cat and they terrify me. Scream did not terrify me. It's not really designed to. It is, however, the most 90s franchise, I think, in the world. The third one is like a great standard movie. I'm glad I watched it. I would definitely watch it again. Second one is like a little ridiculous, but you're still kind of okay going with it. The third one goes off the rails, and I truly don't understand why every person in the franchise by the third movie does not carry a gun with them at all times. It's nonsensical. The fourth one is more than anything else just an experience. I was not prepared for any part of that fourth movie. Emma Roberts being there? Confusing. One of the Culkins being there? Even more confusing, considering it's the third Culkin, the one who isn't, like, in anything else. Honestly, though, they were all really fun, and I had a good time watching them. Like, I'm glad that I finally watched the entire franchise, because it's ridiculous, but I'd watch them again. They're all so over the top, but also, because I watched all 4 of them and a couple of other movies in 2018, Letterboxd told me that David Arquette was my most watched actor for the entirety of 2018, and that is the worst thing I can imagine. Since we're talking about, like, thrillers and horror movies, I'm gonna try to get through a few of these somewhat quickly. I want to talk about 2 movies by Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan is the guy who created the Haunting of Hill House TV series. I went back and watched a couple of his other movies that came before Hill House, one of which was really good, the other of which would have been great if I hadn't already seen Hill House, because it's basically Hill House, but with less time to develop. So there's Hush, which is a thriller. It stars the actress who plays Theo in Hill House, who is actually married to Mike Flanagan. She's in everything that he makes, but she is deaf and she lives in this secluded house on her own, and then a murderer ends up at her house, and it turns into like a game of cat and mouse of him trying to kill her while she fends him off, and she's also a like mystery writer. It's a pretty great movie as far as tension goes. It really maintains tension throughout. It was upsetting because the killer is someone that, like, he's an actor that I know and love from The Newsroom, and by the time I realized it was him, I was like, no! But Kate Siegel is absolutely brilliant in that role, and she makes what is a pretty, like, easy plot really fantastic, and I really love her. The other Mike Flanagan movie I watched was Oculus, which I know a lot of people really liked the year it came out. That's the one that's Hill House, but not given as much time. Oculus is exploring so many of the same themes that Haunting of Hill House does, and I absolutely loved that series. I adored that series for its writing and for its character development, for the way it merges the scary with family dynamics. I love family dramas that are masquerading as other types of movies. It's a horror series, but it's not. It's a family drama. Oculus hits a lot of those same notes. It's about two siblings who grew up in a house that was haunted, but they've grown up now, and one of them still firmly believes that the house is haunted, and the other one doesn't. And they're trying to get proof while the house slowly drives them insane, and they're trying to deal with the fact that perhaps it is about a mental illness that runs in their family, or is it that the house is actually haunted? Like I said, it's a pretty good movie. Karen Gillan is really good in it, but watching it after Hill House, there's just not as much substance there, so it's good, but that's kind of it. I also watched The Conjuring, which is, I would venture to say, the scariest movie I've ever watched, but also one of the best made horror films I've ever seen. You could tell that this was being helmed by a very, very good director. I think a lot of movies fumble when they focus on children too much because there aren't a lot of great child actors out there, but what makes this movie great is those kids and how good they are. I've loved Joey King, who's one of the daughters, for a long time. She was Ramona in Ramona and Beezus, which isn't a great movie, but I loved it for its relevance to my life when I saw it. She's also in The Dark Knight Rises and a few other things, and I don't know, I just really love Joey King, and there's one scene that she performs where she says almost nothing, but you see dread and absolute terror take her over, and it's brilliant. This movie terrified me. I screamed aloud multiple times. I was like hugging my sister. This truly tested how much I wanted to stay dedicated to watching scary movies, because I was like, oh shit, this is actually really scary. But I think it was really scary with really excellent filmmaking to back it up, so I absolutely loved it. I don't know if I would ever watch it again, but I loved it. So I watched The Witch, which was really great. It's a good way of balancing suspense without giving you a direct answer. And Anya Taylor-Joy is an actress I watched a lot of in 2018. I watched her in Thoroughbreds, which overall was a movie I didn't like, but she was really good in it. I watched Split, which I think she is phenomenal in, and then at the beginning of 2018 I went and saw Glass, and given the amount of time she is given, she's really good in that role. I really, really have come to admire Anya Taylor-Joy, and she's got this, like, weird creepiness about her that works particularly well for The Witch, but also I wanted the movie to start where this movie ended. Like, I loved this, but I want one about what happens after the ending, because, like, I'm gonna skip talking about Jonah Hex because it's very terrible and is full of actors who truly make you question where cinema was in 2010, that we allowed all of those people to create a movie that bad. The most memorable thing about Jonah Hex is that they say his full name, Jonah Hex, at least 40 times a scene. Everyone constantly says his full name, and it's the worst, but at least Michael Fassbender was giving it his all as the villain's henchman. Michael Fassbender was a henchman in 2010. Disgrace. But I wanted to talk about 30 Days of Night for a very particular reason. I watched 30 Days of Night. It's a pretty good vampire movie about a city in Alaska where during a particular 30-day period of time there is no sunlight. So obviously when this happens, there are Alaskan vampires and they come after the town and they try to kill everybody. It's a pretty good movie. I think it's pretty standard fare for like survival movies. It hits a lot of the same beats as like a zombie survival movie, but we got like 45 minutes into this movie and I was like, I promise it isn't the vampires. This movie is giving me the strongest Twilight vibes. Something about the direction of this film makes me think Twilight. The person who directed 30 Days of Night directed Eclipse, so I was 100% right, and that is my favorite observation about 30 Days of Night, because it's like a classic vampire movie that was directed by the same guy who directed a Twilight movie. That makes me happy in my soul. A couple more of these older movies, then we'll move on to the newer stuff. I have so much I wanted to talk about. I hope everyone's cool with a very long video. I wanted to talk about, Goon, and its sequel, Goon: Last of the Enforcers. I watched both over the course of 2018, and both are really great. I think Goon is a way better movie than Goon: Last of the Enforcers, but like, if you like Check Please, the webcomic, the graphic novel, for its portrayal of bad-mouthed hockey boys who are at their heart very soft, I implore you to watch Goon, although it is like foul. It's a hard R as a warning, but at the center of it is the softest sweater boy that ever there was. I have never watched a male character in a film before that made me go, I want to cook him meatloaf and tell him that he's gonna be great someday. He's just... Doug Glatt is the sweetest, softest character in the world, who willingly and in the first movie beats people up for being homophobic because he has a gay younger brother, and he's like, okay, I don't fight often, but I will punch you as hard as I can if you're being homophobic. They're both like written and directed by Jay Baruchel, the voice of Hiccup in How to Train Your Dragon. Those are like his only two writing and directing credits ever. And I'm so glad that he dedicated himself to making these two movies about a soft hockey boy. It makes me very happy. So the last movie I want to talk about that came out pre-2018 is Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. This is a biopic about the guy who created Wonder Woman, but more than it just being the guy who created Wonder Woman, it's the polyamorous throuple that created Wonder Woman. It's about Professor Marston and the two women in his life and their relationship, all three of them together, and sort of like also the BDSM history of Wonder Woman, how Wonder Woman became a representation of the powerful women in his life, the power of dominance and submission as far as like a superhero goes. It is a really fascinating and excellent movie that I highly recommend. I'm glad that I knew more about the history going into this movie, because I think if I hadn't known how the actual historical story ended, I would have been very stressed for the entire runtime, but because I knew the history of these three people, I was more like, okay, you're gonna get through this, it's gonna be okay. And it's just a really lovely story. It's incredible to learn more about Wonder Woman and where that came from, but it's incredible to learn about these three people in history and the space they occupied and having to fight for their right to love the way they wanted to love. And I really, really, really loved it, and I highly recommend that you watch it, because it's great. Okay, now we are going to talk about 2018 releases, whether that be on Netflix or theater releases. These were released in 2018, and I watched them in 2018. First, I want to talk about a gay one, and that is Hearts Beat Loud, which became one of my new favorite movies of all time. Oh my god. This is, at its heart, a movie about a daughter and her single father. The girl Sam is about to leave to go to college on the other side of the country, and her dad is trying desperately to hold on to her for as long as he can, so he's really pushing to get her to start a band with him, and then they write a song, it goes up on Spotify, and it gets a little bit of attention. That's kind of what this movie is. That's like the way to sell it in a theater, but this is more like a slice of life indie film. The song getting some attention really doesn't have that much of a bearing on the plot. It's very much just about this father and daughter trying to deal with the fact that she is growing up, she is going to move away, and that her father has been clinging to her and avoiding creating his own life, and also they've been dealing with the grief of losing a wife, losing a mother a few years earlier, and this is a romance between the daughter and another girl that she meets. I want to say that central character, Sam, is bi. They never use any identifiers for either of the queer characters, but there is a scene that I love with my whole heart, and it is Nick Offerman, who plays the dad, talking to Kiersey Clemens, who plays the daughter, and he asks her, after she's written a lyric, if she has a boyfriend, and she kind of like shakes her head, and then he asks if she has a girlfriend, and she says no initially, and then goes, okay, yes, I do have a girlfriend. It's great. It's so soft. It's very character-focused over plot, which is what I love in books, so of course I loved it in movie form. It's the queer girl indie drama of my dreams. Please watch it. It's on Hulu, or at least it was when I watched it, and I loved it. I desperately want my own copy so that I can, like, display it. I'm trying to build up, like, my DVD and Blu-ray collection of queer film so that I can have my own library, and this is an essential piece. We are going to spend less time talking about some of these other movies. In October, I went and saw Venom, which was better than expected. I was ready to hate Venom, and then I kind of reluctantly loved it. Honestly, I think it is because Tom Hardy is a very good actor, and because it was weirdly written as, like, a romance storyline between him and Venom. That's, like, the only way you can read that storyline. So yeah, like, it's a disaster that somehow crawled out of 2003 and landed in our laps in 2018, but it's fun, and I 100% would go see a sequel. Also went and saw the new Halloween. I have never seen any of the other Halloween movies. Never saw the original, never saw any of the sequels to any of the sequels. And honestly, it was pretty good. I don't think I am going to see myself watching any other movies in the Halloween franchise series. I think that there were a couple of times that it missed its mark on ways that it could be really innovative, but I do like a lot of the original Halloween scenes that it flipped on its head, and I loved the way that all of the central characters were women, and it was cool. That's kind of it, though. Also, went and saw Overlord. So, I was not ready to like Overlord. I thought it was gonna be fine, but I was prepared to be seeing, like, a man movie. I would say to go into Overlord without watching trailers, because I think that the trailer gives away something that I would have loved going into this movie not knowing. That's vague, but that's how I'm gonna phrase it. If you don't like war movies, this is going to be a pretty intense war movie. The introductory sequence is, like, incredibly overwhelming for a good reason. It really wants to put you in the overwhelmed heads of all of those soldiers, but it turns into something a lot more sinister and horrifying, and it does it really, really well. And Kurt Russell's son, whose name I will someday remember, is fucking great in this movie. And so is the central character, Jovan Adepo, I think. I've never seen him in another movie, but he is absolutely excellent as the person who holds this movie together. It is a stressful film. You will be stressed, but I think it's really, really great. I'm gonna take a break from theaters and Virgin and Netflix for a minute and talk about some Netflix originals, hopefully quickly. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is one. I was excited for this movie because I love the Coen brothers, and it is a series of 6 vignettes. It's just 6 separate stories that are totally unconnected, and I think that I loved the first story, and I loved the last story, but a lot of the ones in the middle were really lacking, and I think that it was to a disadvantage that the movie starts with the strongest story, because then you just kind of feel let down from there, and the last one, kind of picks it up again so that you end on a good note, but it never reaches how solid that first part is. If you love the Coen brothers, give it a watch. Maybe you'll like it, but it is definitely not their strongest, and it is definitely weak in terms of, like, quality level, because it really dips and rises a lot. There's also Outlaw King. I watched this movie for Chris Pine. Honestly. I like stories about this era. I like stories about kings and fighting for power, but I watched this for Chris Pine. And if you're just watching it for Chris Pine, it's pretty good. He does a good job. He does a remarkably good Scottish accent, in my opinion, though it took me a while to adjust to Chris Pine having a Scottish accent. I think it has some pacing issues, and it doesn't stand out from the pack of other movies like this super well, but is overall, like, a good way to spend a couple of hours, and Chris Pine's really good in it, so that's kind of it. I'm not going to talk about any of the Netflix original Christmas movies I watched, because we are way too far out to do that. I watched a couple good ones, and one really terrible one. It was the sequel to A Christmas Prince. It was really, really bad. But I did want to talk about Dumplin', because it is a YA adaptation that happened. A lot of people really loved To All the Boys I Loved Before. I like To All the Boys I Loved Before for its representation. I didn't really like it as a film. To All the Boys I Loved Before, because it wasn't to my tastes, I didn't like it, but I also think, as a YA adaptation, it does a really good job of adapting that story. I love that Netflix is adapting YA. I think that they should stick with it. I think that they are going to do way better adapting YA than, like, big studios do. Love, Simon is one of the only good YA adaptations, and Perks of Being a Wallflower. Those are, like, two of my favorite movies of all time. So, I don't know. But Netflix has done a better job, I think, with them overall, and I really loved Dumplin'. I cried watching Dumplin'. I've never read the book, and I don't really plan on reading the book, but it was really lovely. I loved the Dolly Parton songs. I loved all of the actresses. And it was really good and nice. And I hope that they are going to adapt the other one, because I think that there's a more queer central character in the second one, maybe. Bex Taylor Klaus plays a character who I think we're supposed to perceive as queer in Dumplin', but it's never really confirmed. So if they make another one. Okay, pivoting back to theater movies. I have way more. Ralph Breaks the Internet was great. I liked the first WreckIt Ralph movie. I thought it was cute. You know, it's a Disney movie. It does everything that it needs to. It's cute. It's rewatchable. I really, really liked Ralph Breaks the Internet. I thought it was honestly like a good story about friendship, like how to maintain a healthy friendship, which is a really nice storyline for a Disney movie. And honestly, even if the entire movie was very fan-servicey in incorporating every Disney character ever, totally worked on me. The princess sequence is one of the best things that has ever happened. I loved it, and I loved watching this movie. I also finally saw Crazy Rich Asians, which I didn't get the chance to see in a theater, so I rented it on Amazon, and it was so good. I am so excited that they're making more of these movies. Constance Wu and Henry Golding were brilliant. Such a good couple. Henry Golding, like, I saw Crazy Rich Asians and I saw A Simple Favor with him all in the space of a couple months, and, like, I am totally fine with him being the leading man in these movies from here on out. But, like, this was a really good movie. I loved it. I had every expectation to love it, and it met every expectation and beyond. It was great. 2 more to get through. Let's talk about Mary Poppins Returns. So, I feel like the reviews for this movie were somewhat mixed, and I fall on the side of I liked it. I really liked it. What I wanted to note specifically for what I loved about Mary Poppins Returns is that it's a movie musical that evokes the kind of movie musical we used to make. It doesn't feel like a modern day musical, and that is 100% to its advantage. It feels like Mary Poppins. The songs have all of the right vibes, the characters, the story, just so much of it perfectly encapsulates what the original Mary Poppins felt like, which is a movie I adore, and I loved that maintained that tone. I loved all of the music, but Emily Blunt is excellent. Meryl Streep is honestly very good. I love Ben Whishaw and Emily Mortimer and have for years, so it was great to see them in leading roles. I thought it was fun and wonderful. Oh, and Dick Van Dyke. Dick Van Dyke, oh my god, was so good. Okay, last movie I have to talk about is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I think I'm in the majority. Pretty easy to say that I loved Into the Spider-Verse. I saw it twice in the theater. In the space of a couple weeks. I saw it like near the end of December, and then I saw it January 1st of 2019 again, because I wanted to have a time to see it again, to see all the little details, the stuff that I didn't get to focus on when I was more focused on a central storyline, and I can't wait to watch it again, because there's always going to be more that you catch. It is phenomenally well made. It is innovative in the best of ways for an animated film. I love Jake Johnson. I love him in New Girl, and I think that he's playing the exact same character as Peter B. Parker, but that's fine. The reason I love Nick in New Girl is because I relate to him. Like, even beyond that, I loved Shameik Moore, I loved Nick Cage, and John Mulaney. They were fantastic. This movie is funny, it has a lot of heart, it is gorgeous to look at. It recreates so many different characters in new ways. It totally revitalized Spider-Man for me. I've always loved Spider-Man. He's like one of my original favorite superheroes because I grew up with the Sam Raimi movies, and even if they're a little embarrassing to look back on, I've always loved Spider-Man, and I loved what they did for Spider-Man in this movie. It's just incredible, and it deserves every award that it got over the entire awards season, and it should have received more. Okay, that is it. I am done talking about movies that I watched in 2018. And now that it's March, it's almost time to do another quarterly movie discussion, so you can probably look for that 3 months from now. What were some of your favorite movies that you watched at the tail end of 2018? Did you see any of these movies? What did you think about them? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!